Armchair commanders, we call the shots. From our living room thrones where the action's hot. We're the generals of fiction, the masters of war. In silver screen battles with buttered popcorn. Armchair commanders, armchair commanders.
All right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John.
And I'm Jack, coming live to you from my living room laptop.
I'm so glad you could make it after all of our tech issues.
My God, my fucking legs are sore from jumping through all these hoops for a movie I didn't even like.
Oh. Way to just, man, maybe we should introduce our guests before you alienate them and they just leave. We're joined by the guys from the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast. Welcome, and if you want to tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Elijah.
I'm Jack, the other Jack.
Jack number 2.
Yeah, I'll go by Jack number 2 the rest of the time.
But we're here at the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast. We talk about bourbon whiskey, American Civil War history, and any other topic in between that kind of relates to either of those.
Yeah, we're pretty new. We've been out since July of last year, so we just had, our 23rd, 22nd episode, so we do 2 episodes a month, and I know you all have been in contact with Elijah for a good while now, so we're excited to be on here, and we've listened to some of your stuff before, and we're just glad to be a part of it and talk about a movie that has some mixed reviews.
In a casual setting.
I think we got started maybe today actually marks our 1 year of being a podcast. Yay! 1 year. We started with single digits and we're into the double digits now for listeners.
There you go.
But yeah, I find it very interesting how, obviously I like a lot of history content, but there's everybody and their brother does a podcast. It seems like. So I'm always astounded when I find new stuff, and your guys' the stuff you do is really great. You go really in depth on, different aspects of the battles and whatnot. It's definitely a breath of fresh air. Especially compared to the stuff we do, because we're just 2 idiots who hate on everything. But yeah, I was excited when you guys were willing to come and join us. And originally when we were supposed to meet, we had a little bit of a scheduling hiccup, but I think it actually worked out in our benefit, because this week's film, at your request, was Field of Lost Shoes. And the day of this release will be just a few days before the anniversary of the Battle of Newmarket. So I think it's as good a time as any. It's as good a time as any to review it. So kind of starting off, why this film for you guys?
Well, for us, we're both Shenandoah Valley locals, so it relates to us personally. Jack, working with the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District, they're headquartered in Newmarket. They've got so much influence and a role in the Newmarket battlefield preservation and all that stuff. Couldn't have picked a better one, especially this time of year, so close to the anniversary, the 160th. I know they're doing a lot of work there to put on a big event for that occasion there, and I don't know. It's a movie that's got, like Jack said, it's got a lot of mixed reviews, good, bad, and different. So it'll be cool to break down the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So being, this film being a subject that's near and dear to your heart, Jack's already blown he's already made his opinion very well known 30 seconds in. So where do you guys sit? Are you on the positive side of the fence for this film, or are you on the negative side of the fence for this film?
Elijah, take it away.
Ooh.
I'll put my input in after.
Yeah, Jack's got notes written out. Like he's got a whole list, like 2 pages worth of notes on this one. But me personally, I don't want to say it's a bad movie. It is. It's got its cheesiness that some historic movies do. I think it's just a culture barrier as far as the vernacular and everything they try to portray in the film. But overall, it's not terrible. For me personally, with any military movie, I'm always a stickler for uniform accuracy and equipment accuracy, and the fact that throughout this movie they've got the correct VMI cadet uniforms. They've even got like down to the VMI box plates on the cartridge boxes and stuff. Like I live for that stuff. I love that was correct for the most part. Obviously the love story tie-ins and all the other stuff, that's dramatization, I'm sure, for being a movie in Hollywood and whatnot. But I thought it was good. I wouldn't say it was bad. I'd watch it again. I've watched it a couple times. I think it's one to watch when you've got a free day to watch a history movie.
I wanted to love it so bad.
And there's that.
It's so close to being good.
Yeah.
But it's just painful when you know really what happens. So if it's like an average Joe and you're watching it, it's got a great story to it. But if you know the facts, it's really painful, really, really painful. And they did so much by doing so little in the most negative way you can put that. Specifically with like the battle scenes, just so painful to watch, like really high quality troop movements, the special effects with the explosions and stuff. And then you cut to like a 1990 reenactment footage from like Gettysburg, and it's like hot and sunny in that clip. And then you cut back and it's like kind of rainy in what they were doing. So minor stuff like that. I mean, I love it for the fact that it covers a topic that's so near and dear to our hearts, but at the same time, knowing the entire story to its truth, to its core, it's so painful to watch at times. I mean, it's very painful to watch. So 2 pages of notes I've got. So yeah, it's I wanted to love it. I wanted to love it really bad, but it's definitely not at the top of my list for a Civil War movie.
Yeah, this was. I think the problem with the Civil War in film, just period, is the subject matter. It like there are so many great stories in the Civil War, and I think the story of kids from a military school drawn up at the last minute to bolster up an army's forces, like that description in and of itself should lead to a good movie.
Oh yeah.
But I think Civil War films, they often fall into the trap of there's a lot of, I don't know, tiresome dialogue and conversations, and I think it's very easy to make a Civil War movie boring. I think it's difficult to make it interesting throughout. But I don't know if you guys caught our episode reviewing Gettysburg. But we had a guy on, his name is John, and his brand is called the Tattooed Historian. And he's like, yeah, this is my favorite film. It's one of my top 2 Civil War movies of all time. And Jack will attest to this. Like, he gave it our guest gave it a high rating. Jack gave it like a middle to upper end rating for the film, but I gave that like a 1 out of 5. I was like, because this is boring, it's slow, there's too much talking, all that. And I sent him a message yesterday. I'm like, I'm sorry for being so harsh on Gettysburg, man. Like, I just watched this movie, and you know what? I'm going to have to issue like a public apology after.
Yeah. Ron Maxwell definitely did a better job than what happened here.
Well, I had to Google it. So this film is directed by a guy named Sean McNamara, and he brought you such wonderful hits as Casper the Friendly Ghost and Soul Surfer. So
Yes.
he has a lot of experience doing war films.
Well, this was, I think, significantly funded by I guess who was the top dog at Dominion Energy, which is a big energy corporation here in Virginia. Millions and millions of dollars, I think, is through that company. I think he's a former VMI guy, which I think, if that's correct, but I know Dominion Energy played a role in funding this film. So that's where that bankroll came from.
The film definitely kind of comes off as like a VMI recruitment ad almost.
You would think that 10 years ago when this, over 10 years ago when this came out, but now VMI has nothing to do with Newmarket. So take that for what it is. They probably wouldn't even show that film to any recruits to get into the school. Yeah.
So Jack, I know you already stated you were not a fan of this film. What are your initial thoughts?
Wow. I never thought the Confederacy was such an affable place for a slave.
That was most of the Rotten Tomato views that or not Rotten Tomato, but the Google reviews.
Yeah, those friendly soldiers helping that poor black lady trapped under that wagon.
Which more than likely did not happen.
And those oh so rascally scamps almost getting that black guy hung.
Yeah.
I love Keith David.
Yeah, Keith David. I mean, what a beast to be in the movie. And Old Judge, he was an act like that. Most of his story is accurate. What happens to him afterwards, and the role he plays at the Institute at the time of the war. But to use him in that kind of light is very interesting. It's an interesting take to tell that story.
Yeah, old Judge gained his freedom after the war. By who?
Not by the cadets.
I think Keith David is a shining light in this film. Of all the actors and characters in this film, I think he has the best character, and I think he has the best performance. So
yeah.
I really think him in this film is like a saving grace to it.
Yeah, I think, in my personal opinion, I think Jason Isaacs did a really good job as Breckinridge, knowing kind of the personality of Southern generals, especially John Breckinridge, former Vice President of the United States, Kentuckian. His kind of personality, especially during the Battle of Newmarket. I think I didn't cringe at all during his, dialogue or anything like that. But, David Arquette's, that was a little cringeworthy at times. But, yeah.
You can tell he's a little more of a seasoned actor.
I just couldn't stop thinking about Harry Potter, though, every time I saw it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very odd.
The first thing I thought, though, when I saw Jason Isaacs, I was like, how in the fuck did you afford him?
Dominion Energy. It's energy, money. Well, the budget was $6 million, I think, and it shows. So I think it just went towards Jason Isaacs, Keith David, and David Arquette.
Yeah, $500,000 went towards the rest of the film.
Yeah,
everything else was him.
I think he did the best that he could in this film, but his dialogue was so there really wasn't a lot of substance to Jason Isaacs' dialogue. So there was a couple of times where it kind of just came off flat to me when he was talking.
Yeah.
But he is definitely obviously Jason Isaacs is a terrific actor, and I think he did the best he could with this character.
Yeah.
But I think any kind of lacking in his character came down to the writing, and I think the writing is just an issue throughout this entire film.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that for him being the general that's leading the Confederate Army in this battle and is making the decision to put the cadets into the battle, he should have much more of a focus on his, development throughout the movie instead of just a little bit here, a little bit there of his opinion on putting cadets into battle. Because it seems like all he's ever doing is I don't want to put them in. Oh, I don't want to put them in. Put them in. That's about all they're really giving him instead of really focusing on his asides or development throughout the film.
That's your standard war movie. Cut to lead guy. Cut to the general. Cut to the commander to create that order that affects your main focus group. So that's a go-to war movie, especially Civil War movie. You see it in Gettysburg the whole time.
I love how they even cut to Lincoln. Like, really, you think he's going to know about, you know, VMI being thrown into the battle formations? Because it cuts to him, he's like, my God, we're slaughtering school children. It's like, I guarantee Lincoln probably had no idea until after the fact.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think
100%.
the dispositions of the cadets being shipped up to Newmarket were going to be anywhere close to being known by federal intelligence because like you see in the movie, the closest they are is Winchester, where we're at, which is a good, 80, 90 miles away.
From DC.
Well, from Newmarket, I guess you'd be like 40 miles.
Yeah, 40 miles.
About 40 miles. I mean, there's no way that you would have any kind of idea that the cadets are marching up to meet you.
Yeah, these troops during the war, almost every battle, they had, each opposing side has no idea the numbers that each other has. It's either overestimated or underestimated the entire time. And the likelihood, like you said, John, the commander-in-chief of the country knowing that 257 schoolboys were marching behind John Isaacs, they had no idea.
Also, in this time frame, like, it's not like a super prevalent part, but let's not pretend that like both armies, like using children in the army was not a new or novel concept. Like,
yeah. See, that's been a thing. I mean, the drummer boys and younger folks that were exaggerating or lying about their age to enlist.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
who doesn't
day one.
Who doesn't love a good story about a child soldier, right?
Only when it's in America, right?
Yeah.
And that scene where they're marching by the older, more experienced soldiers, and they're doing that whole thing, like, oh yeah,
Heckling.
You guys are gonna love combat. I would have been up there like, oh fuck, we're using kids, we're gonna lose this war. Oh my god.
They were talking mad shit as the cadets arrived in Stanton.
Like,
they were like, oh yeah, they were teasing the hell out of them when they got there. And yeah, same thing, Jack. I would have been like, holy shit, we're using kids?
Like, we're fucking
This
donezo.
Yeah, not my first reaction is, oh, great kids.
Yeah.
So
we did a good job, and they surely can.
One thing for you guys, who is your favorite character in our band of rascally kids?
That's a tough one.
Oh, for rascally kids.
Personally, and this is obviously cliche because it's one of the main cadets is Sam Atwell, because of his not because of the romance connection, but because the whole time I'm watching him throughout the movie, he looks an awful lot like Thomas Garland Jefferson in real life, and that's something I mentioned to Jack before we hopped on here was why didn't they cast him as Garland instead of
better looking?
It must be that to give him the spotlight, but he looks a hell of a lot more like him than who they actually cast for that role.
I like who do I like?
It's a tough decision to come down to it.
I don't know. I mean, I always thought growing up when I first saw it, the kid from Modern Family, Nolan Gould, he plays brother, Robert, the Sir Rat, the little kid at the beginning. That adds some youthfulness and that fake Southern accent he's got.
Yeah, he has like the most Southern accent you will ever hear. Like you guys have you guys have some Southern accents, but like this is like, oh yes, sir.
Yeah, it's like borderline British.
Yeah, it's almost British. It's like, what are you doing?
Like, I do declare.
Yeah.
Like, really, guys?
I think Moses Ezekiel, now that I've watched it again, like when I was younger, it was him, because I watched Modern Family growing up, and I was like, holy shit, this kid's in the movie about the Civil War down the road. But I think Moses Ezekiel, the Jewish cadet, I think he turns out being my favorite just because he doesn't do anything too crazy. He doesn't, like, take away from himself as a character, try to do anything weird. And then that scene where he's, like, asking for the Bible and reading to Thomas Garland Jefferson as he's dying, which is a real thing. Like that moment, just because I know who Moses Ezekiel is as an actual person in history, I think that's what draws me more to him, because he doesn't seem like he's doing too much or part of some fake dramatized scenario for Hollywood. It was, everything he did was pretty factual.
Jack, who is your favorite cadet?
Sir Rat.
There we go.
He's the only one I remember.
It's hard to keep up with those names during the whole time. They all look the same too. All these dudes kind of look the same.
The only reason I remember Jack is because A, he was the asshole like me, and B, well, we have the same name, so that's two similarities.
Well,
he was also in Vampire Diaries, wasn't he?
His name was actually Jacqueline, and he went by Jack or Bev. His middle name was Beverly. So
okay, so yeah, Jack.
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline Beverly. Is it like a boy named Sue situation with him?
Yeah.
But
that reminds me of a roommate I had once upon a time.
Me?
No, not you. No, so me and my wife, we used to have this roommate. It was a friend of hers, and her name was Jackie. Well, her parents wanted her to be named Jacqueline, but they couldn't spell it.
Oh,
so her first name is Jackie, and then her middle name is Lynn. So it's Jackie, first name, middle name Lynn, because they couldn't spell Jacqueline correctly.
Jackie Lynn. That's great.
And if I was a girl, my name would still be Jackie, because Jack was the only name they had picked out for me.
Are you birthed Jack, or are you John that's turned Jack?
No, it's just Jack, not Jackson, not God. John, just Jack.
This is like the only other one I've met in my life. Everyone has either been like a John that's a Jack.
In fact, I'm going to name my autobiography, if I ever get famous enough to warrant one, I'm going to call it Just Jack.
Just Jack.
Yeah.
Just Jack.
I always joke with my wife that whenever we have our first kid, because we're in the planning stages of that in our lives now, I always joke with her, I'm like, yeah, when you're like all hopped up on your painkillers, I'm just going to go to the birth certificate and like if it's a boy, I'm going to name him Ulysses Sherman. And she's like, I swear to God,
just because.
Just to do it.
I want them to get bullied.
This is one thing I noticed in the movie, and I don't know if anybody else caught on to this, but this is me being the equipment stickler that I am. The rubber bayonets. You ever see when they're
yeah,
and the bayonets are wiggling, and it's like
it was bad.
For the untrained eye, it's wow, this is a great combat scene. And then for folks that are really fine tuning, it's like, what are you doing? You can run with a bayonet. You're not gonna fall on it.
I think the last time we've seen bayonets that floppy was Zulu. You haven't seen Zulu? Oh, it's I enjoy it. It is a classic film. It has Michael Caine in it.
Okay.
It's one of his I think it's actually his breakout role, if not one of his earliest roles, but it was one of his first roles in a feature film, and it's about the Battle of Islandia. I can't pronounce it. The British last stand in Africa.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a good movie. It's well worth the watch.
And it's like if that's the worst thing you're nitpicking over a film.
I don't think it's the worst thing we're nitpicking here, though.
Well, in this case, no.
Yeah, I have to say for the record that, just so you two know, John and Jack, that the whole Libby Kleindense thing, her name was actually Lighty, or Eliza, and she had no relationship built before the battle with Sam Atwell, nor did she ever stay in Lexington, where VMI was located. She only lived in Newmarket. And she only would have met the VMI cadets as the battle was taking place or afterwards with the wounded soldiers coming to her house, which did happen. So that none of that ever happened, though. There was no relationship. There was no love interest. Just to set the record straight for listeners as well.
So here's the thing: is like the love story in this is very obviously it's shoehorned in there to add runtime to, bolster the storyline, because realistically there isn't like, up until the battle, there's not really a ton going on. It's kind of like an hour of fluff before they get to the
Yeah.
actual battle. That being said, like, I'm not opposed to a love storyline in a war movie. Like, there's definitely places for it and there's ways to do it right. I just I personally find there's a lot about like Victorian era like societal norms that I find very interesting. And this film had the chance to show us what like actual courting looks like. And I think that could have been an interesting aspect of this story, but instead it's like, I show up to your house and be like, I believe in love at first sight. And she's like, okay, we're going to have 4 kids and you're going to run from an army. And it's like,
That
what
was-
the fuck? Like,
That escalated quickly.
That was definitely one thing that irritated me, was the fact that they portrayed this cadet as being such an awkward, speechless individual when, being an upperclassman at VMI, like,
Oh, these dudes
you
were
could get
balling.
your-
They were balling back then.
Yeah, you could get your words out, you could get your point across. You wouldn't be some timid little schoolboy. Like, you're if you wanted to go and speak to this woman, you would get your point across very quickly. But yeah, no, they make him seem like he's like terrified of this girl as he's about to go fight one of the most significant battles in Shenandoah Valley. Like, come on.
Oh, and them acting like they knew the battle was going to happen. They had no idea they were going to Newmarket. That was full of fluff too. They were.
Yeah, they made that seem like this is happening on this.
don't
day.
follow me. There's nothing
Yeah.
good that'll be there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I like I said earlier, it speaks to just, this film doesn't know how to do character development. And I I have a little rant I'm going to go on, because as Jack mentioned earlier with the portrayal of, slaves in this film, I think that ties into our character development issue very well, because the movie starts off in the first 30 seconds, our main character, he's the narrator, he's like, our nation's about to be torn apart, but my father changed his mind a long time ago. And it's like, no, he didn't. It's like, no, he didn't. Like, your dad, the governor of Virginia, very pro secession. Like, we don't need to change the facts to make characters likable. We don't need to change facts to make characters personable. We don't need to change facts to show nuances in human beings. I would much rather have a story where our cadets, or our main character, he's brought up in a household where his dad is the governor of Virginia. They own slaves. He advocated for secession. So it's not unreasonable for him to be like, yeah, like, this is what is the norm in our local society. Like, it's not a problem if he's on board with it. Like, it's wrong in today's lens, but he's on track for being in the norm in his society, in his place, in his time.
Right.
I would much rather he come from that starting point, go to VMI, develop a relationship with Old Judge, and his relationship with Old Judge changes him into a more enlightened or a better or a good person who comes more in line to what we would consider to be modern thinking today. Like, the fact is that they portray these guys as like paragons of morality start to finish. And that's just, there's not a human being in the world that's like that. The way these guys are acting would have been out of character even for progressive people of the time. Like, even people who advocated for abolition were still super racist. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it doesn't match the time period. Um, and I think that's the issue here is obviously we're building up to this battle and a lot of our characters are going to die and the goal is we want to sympathize and we want to feel something when they die. But it's like we're going over the top into trying to making them like good people, like super relatable, all this stuff, so that when they die, it actually impacts you. Like you, I think you can still show the nuances of them in being human beings with like without trying to sugarcoat things.
Yeah. And I think it's weird too that they only show the childhood and backstory of John Wise. I mean, obviously his father was the governor of Virginia, so that's a big part of it. But at the same time, why just him instead of all of the other cadets? Because Wise, technically, as Jack will probably tell you with his notes, doesn't even play a major role in this battle as the movie may make you think. So why are we just going with one of these cadets' backstories instead of someone who played a more pivotal role or someone who actually dies in the film? Because you would think that that would draw somebody in even more, is giving the childhood backstory and upbringing of someone who's eventually going to die in the film, so that way you get more of a reaction from your audience. But that's just me.
Yeah, John Wise was taken out by an artillery shell exploding over his head as they're descending down that first hill, Shirley's Hill. As they're descending, he's knocked out and is out the rest of the battle. So he has no role. It's like, yeah, it's fascinating too. Even studying the battle today and researching it for like interpretive science and tours as we're building a park. It's like, how much of this guy's firsthand account can I take to heart when he wasn't even the first, it wasn't even firsthand. He wasn't there. Like, he was back there. So it's interesting, like Elijah said, to follow that guy through the entire thing because, he's out 15 minutes into the fight and, misses a key part of it.
And what's also weird too is that they begin with Wise's childhood, and then as you get to VMI, you just switch to Sam Atwell and this love connection and everything, and you run with that for a little bit, and then you get back to Wise towards the end of it, but like you're just focusing on these two cadets, and like none of it really ever ties in. Like
then you get Sir Rat thrown into the first 20 minutes too. He like just shows up with sausages in his bag.
Yeah, with no backstory.
And they're gonna kill him. It's like, what's happening here?
No backstory whatsoever. It's just very loose as far as that goes. Nothing really has a straight line.
Well, you see, VMI was the first vegan military school.
Allegedly.
I was going to say it. I had 100% hoard food in those days, in those time frames. Like,
yeah,
absolutely.
They do now. Cadets do now. They have snacks in their room. They share with like 5 other dudes. They're like, that cafeteria food, just like today, back then, is not any good. So they're hanging on for dear life to anything.
Those sausages look good too.
Oh my god, yeah. That movie food looked great.
I will say this film did a really good job of selling, like, we couldn't taste or smell the bread, but just the way everybody was acting, I believed it was good loaves of bread. So
that did look good. Yeah. It had a nice little squish to it and everything. That was a good loaf of bread.
Nice, like wood fired oven loaf of bread.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you were before we started the episode. I was telling, I don't know, John, if you were listening, but I was telling Elijah that the building that's portrayed as Old Judge's Place, the bakery, is like the only wartime Civil War era building left besides the main school barracks themselves on campus at VMI in Lexington. It's right there on the historic Valley Pike, which is Route 11 today that the soldiers are going to march out of. And then the main barracks themselves, which they actually film a lot of that interior stuff. They just like lay mulch down on the modern sidewalk and call it a day. I talked to one guy that graduated in 2015. So he was there when they were filming the movie. He said they came in and they painted the flagpoles brown to make them look like they were wood, and then painted them silver over that. So he goes, you could take your thumb to it and like get 2 layers of paint on a stainless steel flagpole. So it's like they were in and out real quick during that summer.
One thing also that I noticed, and anybody that's been to VMI or knows about VMI will recognize this, is they at some point pan across the institute and everything, and they've got the cannons set up out front.
No, that's fine.
Matthew, Art, John, and Luke of Stonewall's artillery and the Stonewall Jackson statue. During the war, that wouldn't have been there. Those cannons would have been in the Army of Northern Virginia, still being used in battle. Those wouldn't be sitting out in front of the institute
That is
on
fine.
display with their nice green patina on the cannon tubes. Or
I think you see it for like a split second.
Yeah.
It's like in the corner, and I'm like,
yeah,
those were actually in the war. There's no way they were sitting out
Yeah.
front of there. But those are like, if you're a nerd, you know that.
for the statue of Jackson standing out front.
I don't think that's in the film. It's at the beginning.
Yeah,
of
the
the
Jackson
intro.
statue is. At
Oh,
one
is
point,
it?
Yeah,
Oh.
which is funny because didn't Moses Ezekiel make that one?
They sculpted it.
Yeah.
They
So
took
it's
it
like-
down a couple years ago and then moved it to the battlefield where Jackson would have been dead by the time they fought that battle.
Well, you see, what actually happened was instead of building an additional ironclad, they just shipped that ore to the school to build a statue in the middle of the war.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember, God, I couldn't imagine being a student under Stonewall because I remember reading a biography about him, the one by
Bud
S.E.
Robertson?
by S.E. Gwynn.
Oh. Okay.
It was a Rebel Yell.
Yeah, Rebel Yell.
Yeah.
And he taught, like, one of the chapters is about his time as being a military instructor. And, like, one of the examples that he provided is, like, a student would give you, like, a 3-part answer. And all of the parts were correct, but because they were out of order, he'd still be like, no, you're wrong. Like,
Yeah, it's believed that Jackson was on the spectrum of some sort.
Yep.
By a lot of historians today. He just had a lot of oddball things about him that, nowadays people just, put him, say he's definitely somewhere on, probably the autism spectrum of some sort. They say he used to walk from his house through the campus of Washington College, which is now Washington and Lee, which is between VMI and like the town of Lexington. It's like 2 colleges right next to each other. Oh, we lost Jack, but he'll come back. He'll carry his books with him as he's walking from his house through Washington College to his classroom at VMI, and he's like lifting his books up and down like he's curling weights. And people just thought that was like the oddest thing because he would just do it every time he's walking. Just lift him up and down, lift him up and down. Very odd guy, but very interesting.
Maybe that
It's just-
statue at Manassas has some truth to it.
Oh
After
my
all the
God.
Jack-
Have you guys seen
Jack
that
Jackson.
monument at the Manassas battlefield of Jackson?
no, I haven't been to Manassas.
You'll have to just type in like Stonewall Jackson Monument, Manassas battlefield. And he is like jacked. It's like Superman out of a comic book. He's got like a 12-pack of abs, big old linebacker shoulders. It's just so
hilarious.
odd.
Yeah.
Little bottle of baby oil at the base.
Oh yeah. There's a park ranger out there every day just rubbing him up. Like,
He's preparing for the Olympia.
yeah, he shall return.
So what would you say is, both me and Jack have discussed kind of our beefs with the film. What is the biggest beef that you two have with the film?
I think it's just not necessarily, I love the fact that the equipment is correct. I just think there's minor details that me as a historian would, or an archaeologist would nitpick. But then there's also just the fact that these 7 cadets that they're focusing on are not the only casualties of that battle from VMI. They make it seem like, and Jack will get into this a little deeper. That is such a minuscule number of the casualties of that battle, and it's like you're just gonna forget about everybody else.
Yeah. So I got a lot.
He's got 2 pages.
So I won't do them all, but obviously the big one is that love interest story. That just breaks my heart because I know the descendants of this Libby girl, who's Lighty. I know her great-great-grandchildren. I know the house that she died in. I know where the area where Thomas Garland Jefferson. Like that's really where that story is. That's one that'll bring like tears to my eyes when I read about it or when I was like watching the movie. That's one scene that when I watched it, I know it's true. Was as Moses Ezekiel was reading John chapter 14 to him. I know that's fact. I've seen the letters where in the post-war years, Lydie Krim, as after she's married, will write to Moses Ezekiel. They'll write letters back and forth all the way to their deaths. So I know that relationship and how true it is. And for me, that like just to see how that scene has so much emotion, or that actual event has emotion with it, to see it get twisted into some weird sick love story. She was 26 at the time of the battle, and Sam Atwell was probably in his early 20s, I think, or maybe 19 or something like that.
They made it seem like she was a kid.
I know, they made her seem like she was like 16 years old, but she wasn't. So the love story thing, obviously, the movie could have ended right when they were all in the office of like the commandant of the institute, and they're like, "I stole the bread" or whatever, and there's like, "No,
I'm Spartacus.
Yeah, so that happened, and I was like, I think the honor code that everyone swears is the honor code at VMI is a cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or nor tolerate any of those who do. And if you do those and you get on court-martialed or whatever, basically, you're drummed out of the institute and kicked out, and your name will never be spoken again. So if they actually did that, more than likely they would have been kicked out. I don't think that story actually happened. What else was there?
I thought Courtney Gaines was an interesting choice as the like commandant.
I know. The battle thing really bugged me. It was pissing rain the entire time, and it's like sunny in July in this movie when the battle's taking place. Like, hence why the Field of Lost Shoes has shoes that are now lost. It's because it was pouring down rain, and these guys are getting their shoes sucked out off their feet. Me knowing the geography of the battlefield, they make it seem like the Federals are on Bushong's Hill on one side of this farmhouse, and then there's Shirley's Hill on the other side, and everyone's just fighting with each other, and then the farm's in the middle. There's like two more hills in between that everybody will leapfrog from and to, so I just know the flow of the battle is not accurate whatsoever, but there's some accuracies within it. David Arquette's character, Henry DuPont, doesn't make it to the battlefield until the very end. As the Federals are basically retreating, miles away from the main battlefield, he'll arrive and do some leapfrogging artillery action as the Federals are retreating. It's actually Franz Siegel, the German mean guy that you only see in like one clip. He's actually on command of the field, and I thought that guy actually portrayed Franz Siegel really good. Very angry, pissed off German. He was politically
There was a couple of times with Siegel where I'm like, wait, are they just replaying the same clip?
I know, seriously. But if you look up a picture of him and you look up the actor, I was like, in the movie, I was like, that actually kind of looks like him. But he wasn't pissed off all the time, so I don't know what that was about. And I other than that, the battle stuff irked me because now that we're opening up the people I work for, like a couple 100 acres of this core battlefield, where 3 VMI cadets, I think, are killed on this portion of the battlefield way before they make it to that farm. And it's just interesting to know that there was like so much more to the battle. It's a really short battle. It's really easy to understand, but the fact that they make it look like it's just this big bowl that the troops are just fighting down in wasn't true.
Totally leave out. I mean, the town of Newmarket itself. They make it seem like it's just the Bushong farm that that's fought over.
I'll fire the shots. That's how VMI portrays it today. VMI is what VMI owns the Bushong farm, where the Virginia Museum of the Civil War is, in the restored farmstead. So they tell the entire story, and they have for years, since like the 60s, since they opened it up, as VMI was the only regiment, only detachment fighting in the battle, and they won the battle for the South, and that's just not the case. But
you look completely to the east of town, and there's so much fighting to the east. There's the Federal cavalry charge on the farm. I don't know what it's called out there to the east of town. And Imboden's artillery setting up across Smith's Creek. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening to the east of town that is influencing what's happening where the VMI cadets are fighting in the west of town.
Yeah, and they do play a pivotal role. They plus the 26th Virginia. You got to add, it's not just the VMI cadets, it's the 26th Virginia. Fill the gap that does form because of disorganization and the advancement of the Confederates and people getting lost in the shuffle, the geography of the battlefield. So the VMI does fill the gap. They don't charge out of an orchard over a fence and take a cannon without orders. They are following the flow of the battle, and Federals are already retreating by then. And it's just an empty, a couple of Federals hanging around a gun by the time the VMI cadets get there. They did do a lot. There's 45 cadets that are injured, 10 that are killed as a result of wounds inflicted at the battle. They're important. They do play a massive important role, but it's not like they won and they fought and won the battle all by themselves.
Well, if we were to go by this film's logic, it seems like the logic of how VMI tells a story. The other Confederate forces are only there to offer exposition. Like, my God, those boys are walking on water like Jesus. They took a cannon.
They're holding formation. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. It's odd. But it's exactly what, for years, people that have gone to the battlefield have only heard that story. It's basically the movie you watched in physical form, is what it's been since like the 1960s. So that's why my organization, I'm really proud of what we're doing, is opening up the area between Shirley's Hill and the Bush Hog Farm, which is all this acreage, all this strew of land where there's attacks and counterattacks and fence lines that were in the way, and important features of the battlefield that people never got to see or look at before that played a massive role in why a gap was formed and the VMI cadets filled it. Where did the 5 other cadets get killed before they made it to the Bush Hog Farm? You just assume they all died on one farm? No. There's just so many other, it's like Gettysburg. It's not just Little Round Top like the movie shows you. There's a lot more to it, and the market's the same way. So, this movie is exactly what people have been visiting the battlefield and seeing for the past, 70 years.
Well, like have you guys seen the movie The Horse Soldiers with John Wayne?
Maybe years ago.
So
catch up.
give that movie a shot. We actually we reviewed that film with the guys from the Civil Weird podcast.
Oh, nice.
And that is another it's something as far as films go, but there's actually a pretty big scene that takes inspiration from the VMI cadets, because there's a scene in The Horse Soldiers where a no-name military school by themselves attack John Wayne's cavalry force.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't even make sense, because that particular movie follows Grierson's raid on the Western Front. So they literally just like throw that in there for the sake of adding 10 minutes to the film.
Yeah.
It's one of those early Wild West films just to give you a little action in there.
Right. So instead of talking about the things we hate, let's inject some positivity for a brief moment. Jack, what was one part of this film you enjoyed?
I did like that life lesson they taught to Sir Rat.
That Jack.
Jack won.
Number one.
Angry Jack. Jack, you're muted. Jack, you're muted.
There you go.
Hi.
He really has nothing good to say.
Oh, right.
Can you not hear me?
No, you're muted.
Fucking kidding.
Have you been trying to talk for like the last half hour?
Well, no. Like, you guys have been...
Okay. Jack, Angry Jack, please tell me what you did like about this film.
Well, now I don't want to tell.
Look, if we were in the same time zone, I would be strangling you right now.
Well, I like the lesson that they taught to little Sir Rat about forgiveness and doing wrong.
That was a kind of an interesting scene. Are you referencing the sausage hoarding?
Yeah, the sausage hoarding and how they're about to lynch him, but then they're like, "Oh no, just kidding."
JK.
Never forget this injustice. Now let's go steal bread from our slave baker.
It was a quick turnaround. That
Yeah.
was.
The friendly neighborhood slave.
Morals. What are they?
How about you guys? What would you say is your favorite or the best part of this film for you guys?
Mine's gonna be stupid, so you go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, you go ahead. Mine's gonna be stupid.
Just going back to that scene where Thomas Garland Jefferson's dying and Moses Ezekiel is reading John chapter 14 to him, and he asked for a candlelight, which he did ask for. Yeah, just knowing the full background that I know, and just it's to be able to capture that moment. I was like, oh, thank God, they kind of did something right there. So that's probably my favorite moment of the movie.
Yeah, I did enjoy that because I thought that was, aside from all the cheesiness in between, it's accurate. It's a tearjerker to an extent. I mean, because it makes you feel like you're there with him as he's passing. But me personally, my favorite thing as a metal detectorist, Civil War artifact collector, and that sort of thing, is seeing that they actually paid attention to the detail of the buttons and the belt buckles and stuff on people's uniforms. If you notice, Breckinridge's staff officer, what did they call him? Charlie? I don't know. I don't even know who they called him. He had the script I buttons, which in 1864 you had those imported from England, and Breckinridge with his staff officers' buttons and everything, and the Virginia buttons on the cadet uniforms. Everything is, for the most part, correct. Which in some films you'll see some junky ass like the CSA reenactor buttons and stuff. Like there's no attention to detail. There's
Like Free State of Jones.
Yeah,
we watched that.
That one was
Elijah and I
great.
watched that in theaters, and that was a rough one for we were both in high school still, and we were just nerding out about how shit was wrong, and it was lame. But yeah, I'll agree with you. That's the main characters, shit that they were wearing was pretty good. I mean, even the federal stuff, like DuPont, I think was wearing some, artillery-based uniform items.
With the red shoulder boards
Yeah,
and everything, like that's good. Very well done.
Civilians too. I mean, background characters, I could point out like some dude standing in the distance. I was like, well, he wouldn't have done that. But other than that, yeah, they paid a lot of close attention to detail when it came to the BMI cadets and stuff. But sure, that's a good one. I'll take it. John, what about you?
The aspect of it, so there's a particular scene that I hate, but there's one moment in it that I love. The scene that I strongly dislike is the scene where Breckinridge meets up with our lovable band of scallywags, and he's like, Breckinridge, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, Breckinridge never interacted with his troops like a good leader should or would, but really, Breckinridge, it's too convenient. Breckinridge meets with our central characters. He sits down and he's like, well, we're about to go into battle, so I need to know what each and every one of you are going to do after the war.
Yeah.
And
especially picking out who's going to die.
And he's like, and he does why are you fighting this war? And it goes back to my issues with the writing in this film and the character development, because they're all like, well, my farm got burnt down, or I think war is stupid, or I'm repelling the northern invaders, which it's like, oh, okay, guys, we don't need to know why they're fighting the war. You know why they're fighting the war? They're fucking 16-year-olds who got ordered to. That's why. Okay?
Exactly.
We don't need to fucking do this.
Yeah.
But I love Moses, because when Breckinridge is asking, it's like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm really good at painting, and I'd like to be a sculptor after the war. And Breckinridge, he doesn't say it like this, but essentially he's like, well, that's fucking stupid.
Hard way to make a living.
Yeah. That's
But then he ends up doing that.
I know. He's like the only one that lives though. Because Robin's character's not real.
Yeah, he has statues in Arlington. Like,
Well,
go him.
not anymore.
Did
They took it
Oh.
down.
Let me guess. He made statues of the not winning team,
Yeah, yeah. He depicted.
as one
Yeah,
does.
yeah. Well, he was a damn good artist, though. I mean, he was a really
Yeah.
good sculptor. That Jackson Monument is badass. The one that they show, where it's like a woman looking down. It's called. I think it's in the opening scene when they're like doing the montage of the institute, and it's Virginia mourning her dead, and that's the one he sculpted that sits right in front of the 10 graves of the cadets that are buried that were killed and then are buried at VMI. Some are buried at other cemeteries, but most of them are buried there. And it's called Virginia Mourning Her Dead. So it's basically taking like the lady that you see in the flag of Virginia, and like bringing her to life, holding the flag, and just looking down. And that one's really, that one's still there. It's a beautiful monument.
powerful.
Yeah, he did a really good job with this stuff. Yeah, but the other stuff's weird. Yeah, Breckenridge just walking up. He's like, "Hey, fellas, what are you guys doing?" Yeah, that's a really good point too. To think about it is, we don't need to know why they are fighting. The whole story is they were ordered. They're just boys in school that were like, "Pack your shit, we're marching north," and they're like, "Oh, war, that's what we've been training for," And it's like that's the only reason you need, and it's the fact that their minds are so innocent to where they're just going to fight because they were told to, and then they're going to die, and they're 16 years old. Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah. The general
Well, it's like
enough with the regular troops, especially if cadets is not
like thinking about my own 16-year-old self. Like, I did not have very nuanced political opinions. Um, so I don't expect guys in the 1860s at the same age to have them. Like, it's not like they have CNN.
Yeah,
But it also it like I said, it continues to show the laziness in the writing of this film, because in the first 30 seconds, or the first like 5 minutes of this film, we establish, like, our narrator in the film dictates the Civil War is happening because of the dispute over slavery and where the country's going to go in the direction over this matter. If your narrator in your film does that in the first 5 minutes, we don't need to expound upon that anymore. Like, and it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, in the beginning, you state the film states this is the reason this is happening, and then an hour later, our characters are going to say, "I'm fighting for every reason except the stated reason that the film gave us," and it's
that's
like,
true.
fucking why? Like,
Yeah.
Could use that time to give the backstories on the other cadets instead of just John Wise.
Or just pick one or the other. Don't dive into two and then confuse the fuck out of people.
right. I personally I liked your guys' theory where it's like, if we had focused in on like Jefferson as the main character, I think that would have been like an interesting choice, especially as one of the individuals who dies. Like, I think having your main character be one of the guys who dies is a excellent choice to make, but we don't really get into his life story.
Yeah, if you're going to follow one, why not him? He's 16 years old. He dies at the end. He has that connection with the young girl that is true. He has Moses Ezekiel, a Jewish cadet, reading him a book out of the New Testament. He's the great grandnephew of Thomas Jefferson. He's a rich white boy from a plantation, so he has those connections to enslaved peoples, I'm sure. So, like, there's your golden ticket for making a singular storyline film, I think.
And
out
like
of all of them.
And with his connection to the plantation style, because he makes statements in this film which is like, well, I believe as a high society man that we should help provide for those that are lesser than us. And Jason Isaac's like, oh, and we thank you for that. Like, but yeah, like, I think it would have been great, like, if we had followed him, because we could have had that, like, okay, he meets old Judge, develops that connection, and like his views about things can change. Like,
There you go.
that's where you can see the, like, oh, this is a person I can get behind, But I don't know.
He can represent a lot too. It can give you a perspective on a good majority of what VMI's enrollment was at the time. You're following the VMI cadets. Let's zoom in on one that can kind of cover. You'd have to come from a pretty wealthy background to even be at that school. And if you're 16, you're kind of a younger, age cadet at the time. You still pretty much had like 17 to 21-year-old, 22-year-old at VMI too. But then you had young kids as young as 15 that were there enrolling and fighting in the battle. So, Jefferson's a really good one to follow. He's the reason that, if you look up the organization I work for, the sponsor of the podcast, if you've ever seen our episodes, that's who's in that logo, the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District logo. That is an animated version of Thomas Garland Jefferson's wartime picture, because we thought, he represents a good majority of, the war. He's young. He's from a school. He's the descendant of a founding father and a president. He has that connection to the plantation and the youthfulness. So, I think he's a good individual to. I wish there was more about him in the movie too. He's just kind of almost in the background in a way.
And aside.
Yeah.
He's not a central character.
Honestly, I just, this movie could have been like 30 minutes of getting to know one character and a character development, and then we could have done like a 45-minute battle and then like a 15-minute wrap up.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Let's rewrite it, John. Let's rewrite it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We've got production people. We can make it happen.
Do you think the Commonwealth of Virginia will give us $1 million to remake it?
I don't know. No, they did it
because they gave $1 million. They gave $1 million to this bullshit. Like
that's probably just in tax deduction. No, that's not even like actual cash. It's just like, oh, you don't have to pay taxes. Yeah. Good.
I love the fact that like my hobby is doing this. I review war movies with my buddy, and I get to talk to interesting guys like you. But if you were to give me $5 million and told me to go make a film, I would produce nothing better than this. Like it would. In fact, it would be significantly worse, more than likely. But that's the beauty of being just a voice on the internet, is I can bitch and complain about anything I want without repercussion.
Exactly.
At least Jack has some say, because he's been like an extra in a few films. But
there you go, Jack. What's your IMDb lineup look like?
I don't even think I have one. Hold on.
You should get one.
Yet.
I don't think I've been in any. I've tried to think about it. Like in preparation for this, I was like, what can I brag about? And then I was like, I've been in a couple virtual reality shoots for a local university. And then the group I worked for tried to fund, we did fund and produce kind of a film about our battles around here with a lot of B-roll reenacting shot that was done on really high quality cameras. But nothing that I can think of. We've worked with, I don't know if you all know what Civil War Digital Digest is.
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
So like History Fix is now this like history Netflix platform, streaming platform. We've done some stuff with Will Eichler, who's really big into the history film world, especially helped with a lot of those Park Service documentaries back in like the 90s. We're going to have him on actually here in a couple episodes, but he's been a good resource for us and how to expand with historic film, especially telling some stories here in the Valley that, can connect to everyday people and not just freak them out if it's about a bunch of Confederates or, bad stuff that people just don't want to even listen to. There's a lot of these stories like Jefferson's or other people where we can tap into and hopefully try to tell them in the future.
You mentioned fancy cameras, and I was going to say it's something this film didn't fucking have, but
oh, that's true.
That was the other thing. Besides lazy writing, this film had some lazy cinematography, just like very basic front-on shots. I will give them credit. It looked like they tried during the battle scenes.
Like the GoPro strapped to the musket. Did you like that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, charge!
Ah!
The CGI of the battlefield was a little.
Oh,
blurry.
God.
The filter that they put on it made it hard to.
It was like a
follow the
video
battle
game.
lines. Yeah, it was tough to read.
But like you mentioned it earlier, it was super distracting to me because it would cut to, like you said, very obvious. Like you can just go to YouTube and Google or type in the search bar on YouTube, like Gettysburg reenactment,
Yep.
150 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, they are just taking snippets of those. And I feel like they're like, oh yeah, we're being clever and tricky because those particular scenes are only on the screen for like 1 to 2 seconds at a time.
So you can't
And
tell.
it's,
Oh,
yeah,
To the untrained eye.
so like if you don't spend a lot of time on YouTube watching battle reenactments like us nerds, you'd be like, oh, like, you know, you could tell they're like, this is such a clever idea. We're going to save money on showing the like how big this battle is, but we're not going to have to pay anybody. And then it makes the scene go down in quality.
Oh yeah. I feel like if I was at the premiere, I would have like been embarrassed. Like if I funded this project, and I pray to God I never interact with the person that did, but like if I funded it, I'd be so disappointed. Because it's just like it just falls short. I was like, it could have been. I wanted, like I said at the beginning, I wanted to like it so much, and it failed me. It failed me at every turn in this film.
Me and Jack, we're not allowed at film festivals because we're like Statler and Waldorf will start throwing popcorn at the screen, like, boo! Your movie is bad, and you should feel bad.
Well, I feel like you guys have the worst pick of it because you've chosen an avenue that's okay. Film. There's so many films out there. Great. Movies are great. All right. Then you're taking something so specific and so written about and researched, which is history, and talked about and documented and made into movies and films, and then combining the two, and then just like you've probably never had ever 100% perfect experience watching a film. I could be wrong, but at least in the Civil War world, I'm disappointed at every turn. You know, whether it's Gods and Generals with the wrong date on the screen, or Gettysburg with a mishap there, or Copperhead, or just any other weird Civil War movie. There's something wrong with everything. And just, are you ever happy with war movies?
Not with Civil War movies.
That's fair.
I enjoy the Civil War a great deal. Like I got my degree in history. My capstone paper was on Confederate naval technology. So like I've done the reading. I've spent time with the subject. Is a good way to put it. I don't think as much time as you guys have, because I don't think I couldn't produce a show like you guys do, but I have a healthy appreciation and understanding of the conflict. And I think the only Civil War movie, and we reviewed it a couple of weeks back, and it's one of the few films that I've given a perfect rating on this show, was Glory. And like even that film has its issues. Every film does. But like,
it's a good movie. That is a damn good movie.
Like Glory is the only Civil War movie that has not made me viscerally pissed off about something.
Oh, it's such a good movie. You got me thinking about it again. I mean, who'd you do that one with? Was that Jared Frederick?
Yeah, I did it with Jared Frederick. Yeah,
that's and he's a wealth of knowledge too. So, God, I could totally get that. That is a really good movie. And I'm sure when you get into those, like, I watched Band of Brothers for the first time this past year, and I was like,
I'm sorry, hold up. How old are you?
I'm 23.
Come on.
So I think it came out.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
You're telling me that this year is the first year you have ever watched Band of Brothers.
And Pacific. I watched that Pacific.
I'm still working on that one, to be fair.
So yeah, because I eat, breathe, and sleep Civil War. I have ever since I was 4 years old. So I didn't have HBO growing up. I don't think so. When it finally made it to Netflix, and now I have HBO, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch it. And I watched it, and I'm like, this is fucking great. And what else was there? Pacific was good too. I think a lot of it, though, what got me into even thinking about doing other like even watching content about other wars and other historic topics was. I don't know if you've ever watched JD with the History Underground.
Yeah, we had him on real early on, and we're talking with him to get another episode done.
Oh, I'm like
we
his biggest fan. Yeah.
we reviewed Monuments Men with him.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. He got me into like just the idea of watching more stuff. You know, you're into YouTube when you're younger, and then getting back into it, listening to it. I've listened to him for a couple years now, and yeah, just listening to his stuff about Easy Company and even his recent series about stuff about World War One. It's been great, and that's what's broadened my knowledge and kind of thirst to watch Band of Brothers and other things like that. Just because I should appreciate good history as well as just good filmmaking and television making when it exists, and I think it exists there.
I think Jack would probably agree with me, but I would say that Band of Brothers, the series in its entirety, we're currently working on an episode by episode review of it.
Yep,
because this year, next year is the 80th anniversary for everything that happened.
Yeah.
But Band of Brothers as a series is one of the like few films that is as close to perfect as a piece of media can get.
Yeah.
And Jack, what would you say in as far as that goes?
Run that by me again.
That Band of Brothers is essentially perfect.
Yeah.
Best answer, Jack. Good answer.
Good answer.
Essential TV.
Yeah. I mean, it blew me away. And then after I watched that and then watching the Pacific, people like briefing me like, oh, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. You're not going to like it. And I'm like, well, the Pacific was pretty fucking good too. Like it was good. It was like really good. Characters were great. Seeing, Rami Malek, play something other than, the lead singer of Queen was interesting for me.
I personally enjoyed him as the Pharaoh in Night at the Museum.
There you go. Oh, yes. Actually, he was a beast in that.
Honestly, out of both the series, the Pacific and Band of Brothers, Rami Malek is probably my favorite actor.
Yeah.
Yes, Snafu is a great character.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what helped build it. And yeah, it really is the characters that draw. And I think Civil War movies and Civil War films, whatever it is, should take a note out of the book of those successful series, following a small group of guys or just a couple guys within it or even one, but having those tight-knit relationships. It was this movie, Field of Lost Shoes, was so close to being able to do, like, they could have done that,
Yeah.
They could have done the small group of guys, the character development, following one person, losing people, but I feel like if you're following a war, especially like even Gettysburg, following Joshua Chamberlain throughout it is good. You get to see his character develop. Then you're also flashing around to 100 different other scenes and watching those characters develop and get lost in 4 hours of that. It's a great film. Love it.
But you develop a strong attachment to the 20th Maine. You develop a strong attachment to Easy Company. And I think that's another thing that this film could have done is they could have just showed these kids having a shared experience. Like they could have just like the closest thing we see to like academy life in this film is like when they're out on the parade ground and they're like, order arms. Yeah. Just repetitive, and then the dude passes out. Like that's the one like, oh, they're suffering together moment until the battle.
And that's something you could build upon before that, that like this whole rat thing, Sir Rat, this idea that they call the first classmen rats. That's true. They still do it today. They call, every senior, basically, if you're a senior, upperclassman or fourth year, they're called dykes. I don't know why. It's just what they're called. So every dyke has a rat. What? Dykes. You're hearing me right. D-Y-K-E. I don't know how that hasn't gotten canceled. I hope it doesn't, because that's the only thing keeping that school together from being too
Finally got the show canceled.
I know. So every dyke has a. I'm sure. I don't know why they didn't include that in the movie. Dyke has a rat, and you build that relationship with it. So if they explained it more, or you would only notice it if you knew it, and I knew it. So when what's his face Sir Rat gets kicked out of line by that other Sam Atwell, or who was that Johnny or whoever kicks him out, Jack, I don't know who, kicks out Brother Rat. He's like, hey, get to the back of the line, and then his what's his face comes up and kind of protects him. That's my rat. Don't mess with him. That's real. Like that's the real brotherhood aspect to this relationship. That's true. That's institute life. That's what BMI is. You're all suffering together, and you even have these personal sufferings where you have a younger classman that's under your wing. But that, and then the drill in the middle of the field where they fall out because they're too hot. That's all you get of these guys suffering together. So yeah, there's a whole opportunity like you see in Band of Brothers at boot camp when they're getting ready to head out to war. There's that bonding experience there. There's people they like. There's people they don't like, and they're all in it together. And you could have developed more of that with this film because they're all doing the same stuff that those guys in Easy Company were doing basically, and that just helps you have a attachment more to these characters, I think.
Yeah, it's like you said, filmmaking in this genre is difficult because it's real easy for me to go to my bookshelf and grab a book and be like, haha, that's fucking wrong. But like I try to give some leniency like on a lot of stuff, but very rarely do we have what we consider would be like 5 out of 5 films. And you're going to hate us because last week we did a 5 out of 5 film and it was for an idiotic choice of Jack's, but I don't know if you guys ever heard of a film called Kung Fury.
No.
It's about a 1980s
It's fucking
Kung Fu.
amazing.
I'll add that one to my list.
Any 80s action film has to be great.
It's a modern film that takes that mirror. The reason we gave it 5 out of 5 is because it is a parody of 1980s films. So in its stated goal of being a parody of a genre, it did a perfect job. Do I think a kung fu master going back in time to kill Hitler with the assistance of a laser raptor? No, it's fucking stupid. But like I said, as a parody film, it did its job as it should, and it made all the appropriate references. Like I think, God, I don't even remember. I gave Glory a perfect rating. I gave Saving Private Ryan a perfect rating.
Love that one.
We gave that stupid fucking film a perfect rating.
What'd you give Gettysburg?
I gave Gettysburg a 1 out of 5. But
holy shit! Same level as this movie, John. What the fuck?
Forget. I told you earlier. I messaged the guy that we did that episode with. I was like, I have to apologize to you, and the next time we do an episode, I'm going to rescind my rating because, like, Gettysburg was one of like our first 10 films we did. So like before doing this podcast, when I watched a war movie, I just watched it, ate my popcorn, and that was it. Like I would think a little bit about it, like being like the history nerd, being like, oh, that's fucking stupid or that's wrong. But then I would just move on with my day. But now that my hobby is literally examining films and trying to just like making critical thinking decisions about them, like my thought process has become more nuanced as we have gone along. So like I will say it, I was too harsh on Gettysburg to start with. Now that we have a year's worth of films that we've reviewed, I will say I was wrong. So
Jack, what'd you give Gettysburg?
I don't even remember. I think it was like mid.
I think you gave it like a 3.5 or 4 or something.
That seems too generous.
You guys do percentages?
What?
Oh yeah. Well, so here's the thing: is we'll get to it here in a little bit, but we don't do stars and we don't just do standard 1 to 5. We do 1 to 5 things.
Okay.
So for Gettysburg, our metric was 1 to 5 charges, because you have the charges up, Little Round Top and Pickett's charge, all of that. So I gave it 1 charge.
One charge.
There was, I can't remember what, we've had some silly ratings. Like we reviewed Midway and we did like 1 to 5 burning aircraft carriers.
I'd like to know what today's is going to be.
I already have, like, I'm open to suggestions, but I already have an idea.
Okay.
I was thinking 1 to 5 sausage links, but
Sausage.
That works.
1 to 5 lost shoes. 1 to 5 brother rats.
oh, that's too on the nose.
Okay. I like sausage links. That means you have to watch it. Yeah.
So yeah, if you wanted, you could be like, oh, I give this a half-eaten sausage link. Like,
Yeah. Have you guys done Gods and Generals?
no,
Don't even start.
All right, so I'm going to take note of that one. Have you done Copperhead?
no.
Nope. Perfect. All right, so you're going to have us on at least 2 more times.
I remember when we did Gettysburg. I was texting with John from Tattooed Historian. I was like, hey man, can we just do the theatrical release? I don't really have the willpower to do the director's cut. And then I went on to Amazon to rent Gettysburg, and it's like, have fun with your 4.5 hour fucking movie. And I'm like, God damn it! Like,
oh, I love it. I love the 4 hour. Oh my God, that movie's so good. It's great. It's how you spend an evening, and then it's like midnight.
well, that's the problem, is I had to take an entire weekend to watch Gettysburg.
There you go. And if you ever do Gettysburg and Gods and Generals back to back, both like director's cuts, it's your whole day. It's amazing. It's incredible. But you have to watch Gettysburg. You want to know a funny story about Gettysburg and me? So back in the day, nobody.
That sounds like a great book title.
Oh yeah. So we went on a field trip in like 4th grade to Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's house, and it's about an hour drive from.
Sorry to interrupt you. I got my boy George right here.
There we go, Georgie. There we go. We have a statue of him in the other room. And I had Gettysburg on DVD, and I'd watched the film so many times leading up to that, field trip, that I was, just what I knew. Little did I know, and I found out on the way back during the field trip, that the DVD I had was double-sided. So my entire life leading up until that point, I thought the movie of Gettysburg ended with Joshua Chamberlain leading the 20th Maine down Little Round Top against the 15th Alabama, and that was it. And then this magical
if you were to end it in the middle somewhere, that's as good a place as any.
Perfect. That's what they did back then when they made this DVD. And then I flipped it over this one time on the way back, and I was like, oh my God, Pickett's charge! Because years I was like, I swear to God, there was this big charge. Was that it? I didn't know. I never been to Gettysburg. I was like 8 years old. Flipped it over. Oh my God, what a glorious movie! And that changed my life after that. Yeah, so that's my Gettysburg story.
See, I'm not that much older than you, but like I was joking when we did our most recent Band of Brothers review, where I was like, yeah, I had the Band of Brothers VHS box set where it was like this 1.5 foot long monstrosity.
Yeah,
Such a great series.
wow, so good.
I wish they would do a series on either Vicksburg or like the 7 Days battles or like Siege of
Yeah,
Petersburg.
the Western theater definitely needs some more love.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
something
something about Vicksburg would be nice.
But where they shift back and forth from perspectives, where it's not just solely a Union or Confederate perspective. Like,
But then you're getting lost in the whole Gettysburg disaster.
Yeah, Gettysburg you could do it too, but you just bounce back and forth and make it flow. That's the hard part, is finding a director or somebody that can make that flow, either between episodes or like in the episode itself, bouncing back and forth, tying it all in. But I think that would be sweet if somebody could set their biases aside to make a really good, historically correct
Good luck.
film. Yeah, that would exactly. That's the hard part today, is trying to do that in a way that pleases everybody. Because I feel like that's one thing with a lot of Civil War movies, why they fail is just you're either heavily biased to one side or the other, and you piss off half the country or half of your audience that would want to watch it and go, oh, I'm not bothered with that. And then it's like,
I don't know.
you're missing the mark there.
I thought Free State of Jones was pretty good as a movie as a whole.
Yeah.
Have you guys watched that one?
No, I didn't. I remember I missed out on the opportunity because they did like a special screening event at my university, but I was like, can't remember. I had something else going on that day.
Yeah.
But
Story wise, it follows a really specific event in a really specific area, and it's like something that at the time was more middle of the road. It could capture different perspectives of people that were looking to watch movies. It wasn't just a war movie. It was talking about the freedom of people in this time in our history where we were revisiting this idea of, is the Civil War important? What does it mean to us? By the time it came out. So it was a good variety of people in the theaters when we went, and other than some lame looking belt buckles and some colored jackets, it was, the story was pretty good as well. It was, I thought it's pretty forgotten, I think, as a Civil War movie. People forget that it came out within the past 10 years.
Yeah, I often forget about that one.
what I really want is I want like a Battle of Hampton Roads movie.
Oh,
That would be sweet.
God.
Not
easy to
that
shoot.
not that like made for TV bullshit they did in the late 90s. I mean like a legit, just it doesn't even have to be all that much. It can just be like a nice even like hour and a half movie, just because that's something that I think is missing from Civil War media also, is there's really nothing as far as like the naval war goes.
No, and that would be easy to film because you're just filming inside of a ship, which is very small, so that's easy to build as a set. So
the Hunley. I mean, there's so many great things you can do with some of
well, Hunley's been done, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
It was a straight to TV, like it was a Turner movie, like a Ted Turner movie. Yeah,
Never
I'll
check that out.
after we're done, I'll send you a link for it for like the preview.
Yeah.
That's another thing with Vicksburg that you could do is like the switching back and forth from the Cairo and the gunboats on the river and everything to the front lines fighting in the forts and the earthworks and stuff. I mean, you can just go back and forth with that perfectly, and like Grant's men landing at Chickasaw Bayou on the boats and everything. That would be such a great cinematic masterpiece that will probably never take place.
No, this will never happen.
Wishful thinking.
Like I'm biased because I have the Monitor and the Merrimack tattooed on my feet.
Oh man,
Nice.
On separate feet.
Yeah, so one foot's the Monitor, the other foot's the Merrimack. When I put my feet together, it looks like they're fighting each other.
Nice.
I bet bath time's fun.
That tattoo fucking sucked.
I bet it did.
It was like a 5-hour session, so like the time wasn't that bad, but I couldn't walk for a week afterwards.
Worth it, I would say.
I'm tattooless. Elijah's got some tattoos.
My artist, I saw him like a month ago or something like that, and he's like, "Hey man, you want to get your feet touched up?" I'm like, "Absolutely not!" Like,
Get away from me.
Get away from me! Don't even look at my feet.
I'm like, whatever happens to these tattoos happens. I don't care. Like,
yeah, jeez.
But kind of moving on. What are you gentlemen drinking tonight?
You want to talk about yours?
Kentucky Peerless Small Batch Bourbon. We haven't had this on an episode yet. This is just a personal sipper of mine. I'm a big fan of Peerless, if you couldn't tell by my T-shirt. Aside from the fact, but yeah, they're down in Louisville, Kentucky, and they do a lot of great stuff. A bunch of different finishes on different bourbons and ryes and things like that. But yeah, if you haven't tried them yet, I highly recommend it. Their bottles are a little pricey. This bourbon here in Virginia runs $94 after tax, I want to say. But man, it's a tasty one, and their rye is also excellent. You won't find a bad product from them. So definitely one for the occasion to sip on.
Yeah, and I'm sipping on Broken Barrel's cask strength. So this is from Broken Barrel Whiskey Company. We did this one in episode 5 with Seth Benheim, the distiller over at the founder over at Broken Barrel. And it's a really neat one. Elijah's been hoarding it at his house, so he brought it back to the podcast studio.
With just a sip left.
Yeah, with just a sip left that I've been able to sip on this evening. The cool thing about it, which I love, is the mash bill and oak bill that's on the label. So they take, we covered it in episode 5, but they take staves, right?
Yeah, staves from different barrels.
From different barrels, ex-bourbon barrels, new French oak barrels, and then sherry cask oak, and put them in the finishing product that gives you a very unique palate and flavor. So it's a great pour. I'm glad Elijah's given me the last. It's a high proof too, 115, which is put some whiskers on you, but it's nice and smooth as a finish. So that's what I'm sipping on.
I thought I was going to be clever. And I was going to be like, oh, I'm going to be like a Southern gentleman and make myself a mint julep. But I was too lazy to do that.
Old Forster has it pre-made.
Instead, I have it's kind of been my go-to recently, and I think I need to cool it because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a replacement bottle. I got Crown Royal's limited release. They did a blackberry whiskey.
Oh yeah, that's been crazy
so
over
here. I've got my hands on one bottle, but I haven't seen it since, which makes me kind of concerned. Because I really enjoy it. I hope they keep making it like they do the peach whiskey. You can see I go more middle shelf as opposed to your guys' top shelf stuff. But I have that whiskey mixed with some lemonade, and then I tossed a couple of fresh blackberries in there. So
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's gotta be good.
It's nice and refreshing, especially like I did some yard work today, so it's a
perfect summertime drink.
Yeah. Jack, what are you drinking tonight?
So, I made my own drink for this. You might want to write this down because it gets complex. It's water and Southern Comfort. In that
Outstanding.
In that order. So you did water first?
Yeah, don't fuck up the order, or else it won't taste right. Of course, it doesn't taste right if you make it right anyway, but I was inspired to make this drink because the Southern Comfort represents the essence of this movie, which is Southern Comfort in the form of propaganda endorsed by Virginia, and B, the water represents the tears of the Confederacy.
I love it. Jack, where do you live?
South Dakota.
Okay.
Way out there.
Yeah.
It tastes awful. In fact, I think I'm going to get rid of the bottle of Southern Comfort I bought.
I've never tried it. I've been told to stay well away from it. So that's where we'll be with that.
Oh, and also I'm double fisting. There's this brand of beer called literally beer that's made.
I heard the can crack earlier, so I was waiting for you to say you had something from a can.
It's a craft lager, and it's literally just a white label with the word beer with a period behind it. So
was it from a movie set?
Beer.
Yeah. I like to call it my dystopian beer, but it actually is pretty good.
Well, you see, unlike you guys, we don't have a sponsor around here, so we have to go very generic.
Yeah, well, our sponsor is very nice, and they helped us get all of our equipment and stuff like that. But we've been very generously supported through the distilleries themselves too, sending us some stuff. I mean, Broken Barrel sent us this, so that was a huge for us because this was like one of our. If this is an episode 5 bourbon or whiskey, it's they sent it to us pretty quick. So there's a lot of nice distilleries out there that just believe in what we're doing and somehow ship us stuff.
Oh no!
It's great.
If you know any distilleries that want to sponsor a wayward podcast with 2 idiots, shoot them our way.
Just incorporate like liquor somehow in your title, and then I think we'll be on board.
As long as you're getting their product out there, I suppose.
Yes.
Alcoholic Armchair Commanders is the official name. Is the name of our show now.
There you go.
Rebrand.
It's like packages just been delivered.
We keep joking about that every episode. We're like, we're not sponsored by them, but we could, hoping that someone somewhere along the way.
I would like you guys to be sponsored by Southern Comfort now. Let's see if we can make that happen for them. Or Crown. It's just Crown sponsors.
I've said it before. I'll sell my soul to anybody. I don't care.
Everything has a price.
We said that at first, and then we realized we have morals.
No, that doesn't exist around here.
Yankees.
Jack was giving me shit because I have a propensity of there's two types of guests that I normally end up inviting, and I've invited a ton of guys from the South, and I've invited a ton of British people on our show. And he's like, "Are you involved in some sort of conspiracy I don't know about?" Like,
starting the war back up.
Yeah, I think he's trying to undermine our democracy by uniting some enemies, but he won't admit to it.
Yes.
I'm fucking on to you, Johnny.
You won't know until it's too late.
Wait, yeah, aren't you from like Iowa or something, John? I don't remember where you're from originally.
yes, I am from Iowa.
That's close to the South.
Literally,
people don't
no.
even consider us from the South. They think Virginia is not a part of the South, but this film would beg to differ.
I find that I feel like the rest of the United States considers Virginia part of the South. Is it just the Deep South that doesn't think Virginia's the South?
I think so.
No. When I went to school in Staten Island for a little while, and they all told me, folks that my classmates, football teammates from the North were like, "Yeah, Virginia's a northern state." I was like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, do you not know that Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy? Like, what northern state are you looking at?
Yeah.
It's like the Mason-Dixon line is above us.
Well, not everybody has availability to an 1850 map, so
This is true.
Yeah.
All right, so I think it's time we give this film a rating. We already discussed it a bit, so guys from the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast, on a 1 to 5 sausage rating, what do you give this film?
Honestly, I would give it maybe a 3 to a 3.5. It's not awful. Yeah, it's not awful. There are some inaccuracies, but that's generally going to be the case with any military movie. Because you got to think the people that are making these films aren't historians like us. They are paying that close attention to detail, and they want a Hollywood film that's going to appeal to everybody. So I think that a 3 to a 3.5 is reasonable. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible. I'd watch it again, but would be my go-to.
I'm gonna give it a 1 sausage link. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1 because it is watchable. It's not below a 1. It's not like half a sausage link, but I feel like it could have been so much more, as we discussed in this long segment. But I give it a 1. I give it a 1 because if you ever have us on again, I feel like the movies we do watch and review with you guys, if we come back, are going to be better than this. And I want a good baseline, and I think this will be the worst out of the ones we watch. So
I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold you to that.
Perfect.
If the next film we do with you isn't better than this, we're going to have a
It's got to be. I mean, 3.
It's only up from here.
Yeah.
Angry Jack.
Huh? I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, fucking 1 to 5 sausage links, Jack.
Well, literally one of the first things I said during this entire recording is my displeasure of this movie. So I've already told you this story, Johnny, and I've already told our dear listeners this story, but I haven't told you two this story. So to summarize my review of this movie, I would like to take you back to when I was 12 years old. See, I grew up on a ranch, right? The work was hard, long, and brutal. And one day, I was checking bulls with my dad in the summer. And there were about 10 bulls. Yeah, that sounds about right. 10 bulls in this pasture. We found and accounted for 9 of them, but we could not find the 10th one. And then right when we were...
perfect timing.
All right. it. Anyway, so we tear all over looking for this bull, right? And we eventually see him off in the distance, all by his lonesome, just wading through water in this little pond, all right? We think this is out of the ordinary, so naturally we go check on him. And, we get over to him, and I stand on the water line, and I throw rocks at him until he gets out of the water. And when he gets out of the water, we see why he was off on his lonesome. His cock was inflated to 3 times its size, bright green, and just infected as all get out. What probably happened is he was bit by a snake and it got infected along with the venom that snake had. My dad gives me one look and he says, "Jack, I know it's going to be a waste of medicine, but I say we at least try." So we used the tranq gun and shot him full of vaccine. 2 days later, that bull was dead. And that image of that bull's inflated, infected cock has haunted me. And up until I saw this movie, that was the worst thing I've seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would rather go back in time and suck out the infection, gargle it, and spit it out than watch this movie again. This movie was so goddamn boring.
That's one way to put it.
But yeah, that's just my little anecdote.
So what? Like a half
How many
sausage?
sausage links?
But how many sausages? I will give it 0.1 sausage, and that's only for the scene with Sir Rat when they're about to kick his ass and lynch him, but they don't, and they teach him a valuable lesson about mercy.
0.1 sausage. Wow.
Just for Sir Rat.
Just for the kid from Modern Family.
Wow, that
For Modern
was.
Family.
I think that's the most impassioned 1 to 5 rating you've given this entire show.
I want you to know, like, that is stuck with. I'm 28 years old now, and that little episode of my life has stuck with me for 16 years now.
Anyways,
John, take it away.
I talked about the writing in this being lazy. It's inaccurate. I agree with Jack. A lot of it is boring. There's so much in this film that does so little. Like, this film had a lot of potential. It's a super interesting subject, but they really let the subject matter down. I'm giving it 1 sausage, but the sausage was the sausage, like, it got to the bottom of the bag that he was hoarding sausages in. So, like, it got all, like, lint covered and kind of mangled. So it's a fucked up 1 sausage.
Wow. So do you average that out? What do you tell our listeners? We've got a 0.1.
Like a 0.75.
There we go. All right. Well,
3/4 of the length.
3/4 of a length.
Jack, what does Rotten Tomatoes give this?
51%.
Oh yeah, that is something we do. Hold on.
I think I got 51%.
That's like your one job around here.
Yeah, I know. I'm letting you down. All right, Field of Lost. There we go.
Nothing I'm not used to.
Come on, load, you goddamn pit. There we go. The tomometer says, God damn it, 40%, and the audience says 51%. So this is a divisive movie, to say the least.
Well, was during the most divisive time during American history.
So it averages out to like a 45% then.
Yeah, you've heard my review, so I think that's being a bit generous. But what do you guys think?
I agree with the critic rating.
Yeah, to put it at like a right down the middle, a little less than the middle of the line, I think is pretty fair. You read a lot of the reviews, especially on like Google and stuff. It's just a lot of people that are like, this is glorifying the South and Virginia and making slavery seem like it was okay.
Yeah.
So it was,
Well, that's the thing. Like, at no point does this film say slavery is good. Like, we get the slave auction, we get like a slave whipping thing. Like, this film says slavery is bad, and that's what the war is about. It just says that our main characters didn't believe in it, and it's like that's just not feasible for a majority of people either side of the line. Like,
yeah,
a good majority of people in the 1860s were super racist. Like that's just who they were.
North or south, yeah.
yeah,
I think a lot of the reviews are the bad reviews that I saw on Google were more so from people that seemed like they couldn't view history objectively. Like you couldn't just view a movie about Civil War history for what it was. It was like as soon as you saw anything Confederate related, it was like, oh, this sucks. Instead of, taking it for what it is. And
How dare this World War II film have a Nazi flag in it?
Yeah, like, it's the
same thing.
What do you like? Come on, it happened. It's history. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. That's all I can really say about it.
All right. Well, I think that that wraps up our review of Field of Lost Shoes. If you guys want to share your podcast, social media accounts, any projects you got coming up, the floor is yours. Let the people know what you want them to know.
Yeah, so we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube at Battlefields and Bourbon. Same for Facebook and Instagram. Battlefields and Bourbon there as well. A couple exciting episodes coming up. Obviously, one that will coincide with this one as well. New Market, as our episode release date will coincide with the 160th anniversary of the Battle of New Market. So May 15th, keep an eye out for that. Our 23rd episode will be the Battle of New Market, and I won't tell you what the bourbon is, but tune in for that. You might be able to guess it if you are familiar with bourbons in the Battle of New Market. It'll be a pretty obvious one, but yeah.
Yeah. If our sponsor is a huge supporter, so Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District. It's like a nonprofit national park service, so we get to swing around and make stuff happen without government overreach. So that's pretty nice. And we're building battlefield parks, saving battlefield land, running museums. So people, if you want to support the podcast, just support that. The mission of the National Historic District. They support us, so that's a huge thank you to them. And thank you to you guys for letting us come on here. This is our first time we've been on somebody's platform, so this is exciting for us. And
yeah, thank you.
I've been into film for a while because of my brother. He's a big film junkie. He's got thousands of, calls it physical media, his DVDs, thousands and thousands of movies. And I grew up just dealing with that. But he's given me an appreciation for film, and a lot of input that's helped me dissect film a lot better than I would have used to. So shout out to him. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having us on. This has been fun. We hope you invite us again.
Oh, absolutely. I was afraid after Jack's initial opening that you guys weren't going to be super stoked on coming back, but I'm glad you guys had a good time.
That's good. We don't get to shoot the shit and say shit ever. So
I was going to say, if you ever invite us over to your side, we'll be sure to be more gentle, more Southern gentleman like.
Yeah.
I do declare.
Yeah.
I promise.
Racism through that, Jack.
I promise. I can tame it or reel it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Jack, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed this show, go check out the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast. Also, leave a review. The stars do matter. If you want additional content from us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Discord under Armchair Commanders. And until next time, I've been John.
I've been Jack.
And thank you so much, guys, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Jack.
Oh, right. Bye.